Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. In this video I'll be explaining how to play the Digimon card game, and I'll be doing this using the Gaia Red starter deck. Now you can buy this online fairly cheaply. I know Japan you won't stock them, but there are also card game stores which you can find them in and they're fairly cheap. I know in Australia a couple of different card game stores are stocking them, tcgcollectors.com.au, and I know Critical Hit has also had them in. So they're fairly easy to get your hands on. However, they do not have an official English release, so they're only available in Japanese at the moment as of recording this video. That may change in the future, however there's no news for an English release. So we'll be using this Gaia Red starter deck. So as I said, Japanese only, so what you can do is you can look up translations online, which thankfully a lot of people have gone through a lot of effort to translate this, so people who don't know any Japanese can still enjoy the game. I'm lucky I know how to read Japanese, so that is very beneficial because it means I don't have to look up translations all the time, so that helps. So I'll be doing just a quick run through of the rules and how to play. So it'll just be a couple of minutes, so I won't go into too much detail. I won't go into detail of every single card. As I said, I'm only going to be using the Gaia Red starter deck. There are 3 starter decks. There's a yellow one, there's a blue one, and then there's this red one. So we'll just be using the red one. So inside your starter deck, you will have some instructions, some memory gauges, and some cards. So, and the same rules apply for if you're building your own deck. So first of all, we have a small deck, which is our Digitama deck. Now, when you're building a deck, your Digitama deck can be anywhere between 0 and 5 cards, but the starter deck has 4 cards in the Digitama deck. So the same rules apply for this game as a lot of card games. You can only have a playset of every card. So a playset is 4 cards, so 4 Koromon. You cannot have 5 Koromon. If you wanted to put in another Digitama, it would have to be a not a Koromon, something else that's a different card. So maybe a Yokomon or a Baby Demon, for example, if we're looking at the red cards. So that's our first deck. And then we have our main deck, which is exactly 50 cards. And in this 50 cards, we have our Digimon, and we have our Tamer cards, and then we have option cards, which, if you know other card games like Magic the Gathering, these are our instants and sorceries that can be cast. However, they're only sorcery speed, which means they can only be cast in your own turn. That I'm aware of. I don't think there's any that can be cast whenever. But we'll go more into the phases of the game shortly. So when you start up a game, you have to first set up the top 5 cards of your deck. Well, obviously you shuffle the deck first, so you set up the first top 5 cards of your deck, and you put them face down, and you put this to the side in what we call the security area. So if you've ever played or watched the anime Duel Masters, funnily enough, the main character in the English dub is voiced by Joshua Seth. So the main character is Taichi in the English dub. Anyway, just a fun bit of trivia. This is very similar to the shields that they have in Duel Masters. So these cards basically act as the player's defense system, which means that these are your life counters. So when the opponent attacks, they have to attack these before they can attack you directly. And of course, when they attack you directly, that means the game is over, and whoever attacks the player directly wins. After you get your security cards, you then draw your hand, which is 5 cards. And obviously this is your hand. That's the same in every card game. You do not reveal it to the other player. This is only yours to know. So then, once you've drawn your hand and your security cards, the game can then begin. You then will work out which player goes first. And the player that goes first will be player 1, player that goes second is player 2. As you can see, I'm using bottom 1 as a counter here. This is the memory gauge, and player 1, player 2, and when the game starts, we put the counter over 1. And then the game starts. So one of these instruction cards is actually very useful. It actually outlines the each stage and each phase to a player's turn. And they actually have each stage written in English as well. So we have our first stage, which is the active phase. And in this active phase, on the first turn, nothing will actually happen, because in this stage, and this is the same for a lot of other card games, this is when you'll be putting any of your tapped, or in this card game rest, Digimon back to untapped or active. So this is the same for Magic the Gathering. When it's tapped, it's because if you've attacked with it, it's tapped, or you've used its ability, it's tapped. And then in your active phase, at the start of your turn, you will then untap the card, which means that it's active once again. So once you've done that, once everything's active again, you move on to the second stage, which is the draw phase. Now, if you are player 1, and this is the first turn of the game, you will not draw a card, and obviously in your next turn you will draw a card. It's only the first turn in the game for the first player, they cannot draw a card, but the player's player 2's first turn, they can draw a card. So it's only the first turn for the first player that cannot draw a card. It's when you win a dice roll in Magic the Gathering, it's called winner's privilege, and your privilege is that you go first, but you also don't get to draw a card on your first turn. Also, it's important to note that if you go to draw a card and your deck is empty, you lose the game. So that's the same for a lot of card games as well. So it's nothing that's too different in terms of other games. Then the next stage is the raising phase. Now, we'll draw our attention back to the Digitama deck. So this phase you can do one of 3 things. So the first thing you can do is, if there's nothing in your raising phase, you can raise a Digimon. So in this case, Koromon. And then that's the end of your raising phase. Or if you already have Koromon there and you have a rookie in your hand, you can evolve, or, well, it depends on the level. If you have a rookie in your raising area already, you can then evolve it to adult or champion. So you will have to pay the evolution cost, which when evolving from egg to child is 0. If you were playing this in the main phase, which I'll get to shortly, you would have to pay the cost of 2, which is its normal cost. So let's say we already have Piyamon out there. It's not the first turn of the first game anymore. It's further on than that, and we want to evolve Piyamon to Birdramon. You'll notice that the cost for evolving to Birdramon is 2, but the cost from playing Birdramon straight to the battlefield is 4. So it really depends on if you have something available there. Your other option in your raising phase is if it's a level 3, which is a child or higher, you can actually move the Digimon from the raising phase into the battle area. And then your next turn, you can choose to raise a new Digitama. And of course, you have the option to not do anything in your raising phase. Let's say you don't have any level 3 Digimon, so you can't evolve, or level 4 Digimon if there's a level 3 Digimon there. So you can also do nothing. So just to recap, you can do one of these things. You can play a Digimon, or play a Digitama card, evolve that Digimon, put the Digimon into the active phase, or do nothing, into the active area, sorry. So you can only do one of those things. Next stage, we have the main phase. So this is the main stage of the game. This is where most things will happen. So in this stage, you will be using any of the cards in your deck, any of the cards in your hand, and basically playing the game as normal. When we were talking about the costs, this refers to the cost of every card. And this refers to this memory gauge that we have here. So this is a shared resource, and it's something that sort of sits in between the two players as they play. So let's say it's my main phase and I want to play Piyamon. I play Piyamon and I don't evolve. So it's playing Piyomon straight to the battlefield, so the cost is 2. I move the counter to 1 on the other player's side. Now, your turn ends whenever the memory gauge on the opponent's side is 1 or greater. So, let's say I have 4 memory, and I play Piyomon. My memory is still 2, I can still play. Let's say I play something, and maybe I play a second Piyomon. The cost is 2, it's 0, it's still my turn. Let's say I play a third Piyomon, cost is 2. The memory gauge has gone over to 2, which is more than 1 on the other player's side, so my turn ends. So you need to take note of this because obviously if your turn ends, you can no longer do anything else in your main phase. And the main phase also means that this is your attack phase as well. However, when you first play a Digimon, they suffer from something that in Magic the Gathering is called summoning sickness, which means that when you first play them, they are not able to attack. So we cannot tap or attack or put our Digimon in active when we first played it. But in our second turn, when this Digimon has recovered from the summoning sickness, we can then attack. And that also takes place in the main phase. Now, just a quick go over of a couple of different abilities. We'll look at the Koromon first. So, we have this ability down the bottom, which is this ability here will remain there no matter what Digimon has Koromon's evolved from. So we set it up like this. This means that this ability will remain there and persist even if we evolve to War Greymon, for example. So what this says is that if this Digimon has 4 other Digimon on top of it, so it's a much stronger Digimon, this Digimon gets DP plus 1000. So obviously that doesn't count at the moment, but when we evolve and we have enough Digimon on top of that, it will count. In addition to having these persisting abilities, we also have ones that are above the name. So, for example, we might have something like Blocker, which means that this Digimon can block, meaning that if your opponent tries to attack you and to attack your security area, you can choose to block, which means that a Digimon that it's attacking will then face off using the DP, which is your Digimon power. So let's say that my opponent is attacking with, let's say, Greymon. So opponent's attacking with Greymon, which is 4000 DP. I'm going to block with Koromon because DP is 6000. They fight, and Koromon has the high DP, so only the Greymon will die. If, let's say, it's a Digimon with a higher DP, so let's say 7000, it attacks, Koromon blocks, Koromon dies, but Garudamon remains. But the security does not you do not lose the security when a Digimon has blocked the attack, because the attack's been blocked, but Koromon has died. If the DP matches, both Digimon die. And that's the same for a lot of other card games as well. Another thing that's important to note is that when you attack your opponent's security, and I'll just pull another card out, some cards such as, I think most cards that aren't Digimon will have a security effect. So they will have their normal effect when you cast this option card, but they'll also have this additional security effect here. So during this turn, your security Digimon, all of your security Digimon have DP plus 7000. So that's an example of an effect that will go off when this card is destroyed from security. But obviously it has a different effect. Well, this one actually has the same effect. Oh, no, this one's next partner's turn. Until the end of your next partner's turn, your security Digimon have DP plus 7000. So it's slightly similar for the security effect. So whenever you defeat or you attack a security, be mindful of the security effect that comes into play after that. However, if you attack the security, and the security is a Digimon, you will then actually have to fight that Digimon. The security will still be destroyed, so you'll still go down one security, but your Digimon basically fights. So these same rules apply for when we were talking about blocking before, is that they then face off using the DP. So no matter what happens, this Digimon, the security Digimon, will always be destroyed anyway. So let's say Piyomon attacks, and the security card is Korodramon. That means Piyomon is destroyed, which means the Digimon underneath Piyomon are also destroyed. But if this is a Piyomon, for example, the attack will obviously destroy the security card, but Piyomon will not be destroyed. So attacking the security cards can be dangerous, but you will want to attack them because otherwise there's no way to win. You could also choose to attack Digimon directly, and of course, obviously, that also follows the DP. So that's more or less a little bit of a rundown. There are lots of different types of mechanics in this game. I just went over the main important ones, and as I said, the bottom here will have the evolution stacking mechanic, so the persisting feature that will happen if that Digimon is part of an evolution chain, and then at the top we have any extra ones. So for example, back to Korodramon, it's a blocker, but it also has this attack phase. So when this Digimon attacks, it actually attacks 2 security, not 1. So the opponent will actually have to reveal 2 security cards instead of 1. And there's quite a few different Digimon that affect how many security cards is given. I think that Wargreimon's also another one. But there's lots of different cards, and as I said, this is just a quick run-through of the rules. I won't go through every single mechanic, especially because new cards are still being released. Not all mechanics are known at the moment. But yeah, that was a bit of a run-through. It's fairly similar to other card games, and if you want to play a bit of the card game yourself, there's actually an iPhone and Android app, which I'm not sure if that QR code takes you there. I'm sure there's a link to the app on that, but it's basically just a how-to-play app. So I recommend checking that out if you want to learn more information about how to play. There's also the Fun Digicar channel on YouTube, which basically runs through different cards and how to play, and has like fun little battles between the hosts, which are fairly cool. And I'm actually thinking about doing similar with a few of my friends, just using our webcams and recording that. So stay tuned to that, because that's potentially possibly happening. I'd like it to happen. I like this card game. I have a couple of decks in the mail, which is exciting, so it's nice to not have to use these starter decks. But anyway, yeah, let me know if you have any other questions. I'm fairly certain I covered everything. I might have forgotten a few bits and pieces, but I'm pretty sure that's more or less a pretty simple and concise getting started. And hopefully it answered any questions you had about the card game. So thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!